alive in every way. Vanessa admired her attitude and strength, and made the mistake of thinking that she could somehow help her, this teenage war refugee, despite the fact that she had proved previously that she was unable to take care of anyone, especially a child. She was destructive and unreliable, and she should have stayed away from Natasha. But she didn't. Instead, she reached out to Natasha to fill her own sense of emptiness, to give her company. And it had eventually resulted in the young girl going missing. One day she left the shelter with a friend and didn't return. The employees at the shelter simply seemed to think she had left voluntarily. But Vanessa knew better. It didn't make sense. She had a Swedish residence permit, and she loved living here. But the alternative, that someone had abducted her, also seemed unrealistic. Who would do it, and why? It didn't matter that Vanessa simultaneously learned that she was allowed to return to the police again. She couldn't do it before she had found Natasha. She started her own investigation into her disappearance, and it finally led her to the conclusion that Natasha had been kidnapped by the Swedish drug gang, the Legion, and brought to a clinic in Chile, along with several other unaccompanied refugee children, where criminals were waiting to steal their organs and sell them to their rich clients. Vanessa had no choice but to head to Chile and try to save Natasha, and with Nicolas's help, she succeeded and brought Natasha to safety. Once back in Sweden, they decided that Natasha would move in with Vanessa and that she would become her legal guardian, a decision that made Vanessa very happy. But the happiness was short-lived. Just a few months after the events in Chile, Natasha learnt that her father had survived the war and decided to return to him in Syria. It broke Vanessa's heart, but there was nothing she could do. Natasha should be with her father, her real family. So, here she was again, back where she started, all alone. With one child gone, and the other on the opposite side of the world, desperately hoping every day that she would return to her in Sweden again. Now. Vanessa bit her lip so hard she could taste blood. She closed her eyes and pressed all 3 buttons at the same time. She screwed her eyes shut so tightly that dancing patterns appeared on the inside of her eyelids. She leaned her head against one shoulder and hunched up in anticipation. She didn't want to die. Not now. A few years ago, she wouldn't have minded. But not today. Not now that she had Celine in her life. Something to fight for. Something good. Something beautiful. Celine had trusted her. She needed her. 3. She felt tears well up. Her lips were trembling. The sinews of her neck stood out as she straightened her back, forcing herself to stand tall. She wasn't going to die cowering. She wasn't going to give the terrorists that. No one would ever know how she spent her last moments, but she would know. She told herself that that actually meant something. 2. Fucking murdering bastards, she whispered. She drew air into her lungs and realised that it could be her last ever breath. 1. Prologue. Every so often, 22-year-old Molly Barry would be flown to palatial villas around the Mediterranean, told to wait, then sent home with an envelope stuffed with cash, without her having to do anything except twiddle her thumbs. But at least she could usually play with her phone or read a book. This time, a dour-looking guard had taken her phone off her the moment she stepped aboard the 35-metre luxury yacht Lucinda. And she had managed to leave the book she was currently reading, Charles Bukowski's Post Office, at home in her apartment in Barcelona. The television could only get Spanish channels, and even though she had been living in Spain for the past few years, she could barely speak the language. But the payment was better than normal. 15,000